I feel that those things are helpful tools to get you going and do not replace experience. Experienced person will go faster. Inexperienced person will make terrible mistakes and probably end up going slower.
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 248. How to use ChatGPT for DevOps. Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darin and Viktor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darin reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Viktor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darin Pope and Viktor Farsic. Viktor, do you still have a job?
Probably. It's not the end of the month, so I haven't seen this month's check, but most likely.
Well, technically it is the end of the month. It is January 31st, but you just haven't checked your checking account yet. I guess the big question is, are we both going to be displaced from jobs very soon?
Some people will be. Not necessarily yet, but here's another prediction from one of the other episodes. We are going to see displacements by the end of 2024. I'm sure of that.
And today's title, which you've already heard, is How to Use ChatGPT for DevOps. So I'm going to subtitle this, How to Quickly Either Lose Your Job or Retain Your Job. Because it's going to be one or the other, I think.
Let's put it, this is the TLDR sentence. Nobody will lose job because of ChatGPT. People will be losing jobs because of people using ChatGPT and similar solutions.
So how should we go about using ChatGPT or, as you say, similar solutions as we're going about our DevOps day?
To begin with that, I believe that many people are still already using it without even necessarily knowing, right? You write code in Visual Studio Code, and whether you know it or no, you're most likely getting already some AI recommendations, suggestions, this or that, right? So there is that unintentional usage of AI or subconscious or unconscious usage of AI in some form of another, right? Or my favorite, what is the name? There is, I have a service, I forgot the name, does Grammarly, yes. I've been using Grammarly for a long time. I haven't written anything without Grammarly for a very, very long time, right? And especially in my case, since English is not my native language, I became significantly faster and better at the same time. So that's already happening for a while now. It's just that it's now accelerated, right? Like in my case, it's been probably like 4 months since the last time I went to google.com. I haven't been there for months now already, right? Because in my case, I'm using bard.google.com. Somebody else might be using something else. It's replacing most of the things we do. I'm becoming even that lazy that like a few hours ago, I was writing some Go code and I wasn't sure about something. I just went immediately asking, hey, tell me how to do this in Go. It saved me from half an hour in Stack Overflow.
But how good was the answer it gave you?
It was good enough for me, who has a relative understanding and experience with Go. I would never suggest somebody who doesn't know, in this case Go, it can be anything else, Kubernetes or cloud or whatever, to take it at face value, right? It's not good enough. It's not that good. I don't think it's even close to be good enough for me to trust it fully, right? It makes silly mistakes. Like I asked him, that was actually today, I asked Bard to tell me how to delete something from a map in Go. And it gave me an example how to... It's a tricky one because all the code is made for a map. Except that one line, the critical one, the one that only matters, that actually assume that map is a slice. Doesn't matter. A slice is an array, right? So it ultimately didn't work at all, right? So I had to ask more questions and to get a few more answers. Finally, I got it. It took me 5 minutes, right? But when you look at it from certain perspective, you would say, what would happen before, right? What would be my process a year ago, right? I would go to Stack Overflow, and then you would ask a question, how trustful is Stack Overflow? And I would say, not very.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Now, Stack Overflow does have a benefit of voting system that you get at the top the solution that is more likely good. But the point is, okay, let me put it this way. I believe that if I find the answer to my specific question, very, very specific question in Stack Overflow, I think it's very trustworthy. But most of the time, you don't find the answer to specific questions. The question that was answered in that Stack Overflow is rarely exactly the same as what you're asking, right? And then it's not really that trustworthy. You're going to copy-paste code that is meant to be different, slightly different or very different than what you're doing.
Compared to what you're getting out of Bard is exactly what you're looking for. Even though it may be completely wrong, it's exactly what you're looking for.
It's not. That's the thing. It's not. I mean, in my example, the first solution was meant to be for a slice, not for a map, right? And it simply directly did not work. I feel that those things are helpful tools to get you going and do not replace experience. Experienced person will go faster. Inexperienced person will make terrible mistakes and probably end up going slower.
Is that the first real takeaway? Is that if you already know something, you should be able to get to the answer that you just can't remember faster? But if you're completely unexperienced, you are completely toast.
I think you're toast. Because if you're inexperienced, you would be forced to spend more time investigating, right? It might take you a day, but you're learning through that process. If you're inexperienced and you just blindly trust it, as if that's Joe who is sitting next to you and has 75 years of experience, then you're toast. You're mistaking experience or ability to understand your needs for something that is not really that case. We're not even close there yet. But what I found is that I'm getting better at having a conversation, not asking a question with AIs. Rarely I get what I really want. Maybe I'm not looking for right things, but rarely I get from the first attempt. But I see it now more than before, almost as if it's a colleague, right? Okay, can you tell me how to do this? Okay, you do it like this and that. Why? Why don't I do it like this, right? You start a conversation. If you're good, right? If you're a curious person, you have a conversation with your colleague. You don't just ask and the colleague says, use this. And you say, thank you. Hopefully, right? You ask questions. Why is that like that? Well, so on and so forth. And then through that conversation, you get somewhere eventually. Now, to be honest, I would always, let's say I'm going to keep Go as example. I would still prefer asking more experienced colleagues for help. It's just that they don't sit waiting for me, right? So this feels like a second best, not the best solution.
So humans would be best, but this is better than Stack Overflow is what you're telling me.
Some humans would be best, not all.
Okay. It would be, okay, I'll use myself as an example. I have been in this space for years.
Mm-hmm.
But you would not want to come to me for answers for Go of how to delete something from a map because I couldn't tell you.
Exactly. Not only that, but I feel, let's say that you're Darin, you're experienced in something. I'm going to call it X, whatever that something is, right? I still feel that your time is more valuable than GPT's time. And I should come to you for something more than every half an hour asking you questions. Oh, can you tell me about this? And then we speak for 2 minutes, and then I hang up and I call you back again in half an hour, right? It's a different dynamic in a way.
It is a different dynamic. But if I could be paid what people are paying for the API rates to access these LLMs, I would be making more money being paid for those question answer sessions than I would be the actual day job.
Is that a promise? If I give you $20 a month, you will spend any time I need with me?
Oh, no, I guess not.
I mean, if that's a promise and you're making it now in front of everybody listening and watching, then hey, I will be your first subscriber.
So what you're saying, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I don't even get a leap year off, so 366 for $20 a month.
Yes.
No, I can't take that deal.
That's the thing, right? And it's not even about you providing a service, right? It's also, let's say, your colleagues, people with whom you're free to ask questions, but maybe you shouldn't be asking all the time. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not using those tools to replace human interaction. I'm using them to partly replace Google search, to be more precise.
If we are able to potentially replace Google search or augment it with some sort of GPT-like engine, where should we be first starting? I don't think the place to start is going to be, I just got dumped on this team. I've got to learn Kubernetes, so I'm going to ask Bard everything about Kubernetes so I can get up to speed faster. That doesn't seem like the right answer.
No. I don't think anybody should, today at least, consider those tools as, okay, I know nothing about X. Tell me what to do first and second and third and fourth, right? I don't think it replaces tutorials and trainings and books and things like that, right? So it's neither replacing humans, not replacing learning material. That's why I think, I think I was right when I said it replaces Google search today. Right? Because you don't go to Google search and say, I mean, you do sometimes in saying Kubernetes for beginners, right? And you will find the training or something, and then you will not go back to Google search for a week or whatever the time it takes to do the training, right? I'm talking about, when I say replace Google search, I mean later on. Okay, so I understand how this works, but what is the syntax to put requested memory and CPU and limits, right? I don't remember. And I don't have any previous example I did at hand. Now, I could go to the documentation, right? But to me, documentation is the other extreme, right? I tend to go to docs not to find examples of something, but rather, okay, now I need to understand this thing in detail, right? Rather than, okay, well, what is the memory limit?
Isn't this where in an organization, assuming you're working in an organization, that the organization should already have its own pre-trained model on everything that's important to that organization? So you can ask better questions instead of going to a general purpose model like ChatGPT?
Definitely. I think that's happening. That's starting to happen right now, right? You can, if you go to one of those services, like I've been experimenting now with Azure OpenAI, I think it's called, or Azure AI Studio or something like that. Anyway, you are supposed to get out of the box all the public knowledge and then augment it or make it exclusive, even if you want, with the knowledge from your organization. Now, here's a simple example, right? This is going to be a question for you. Were you ever frustrated trying to find information about something in your company wiki or whatever you're using?
The answer is always yes. It's never
Exactly.
Did I, it's always yes.
Now, imagine if you could have a chat of sorts that you say, I'm looking for this, or tell me about this, or whatever the question is. It goes through all that and spits out the stuff that you need based on your information, your company information, right? The same wiki that you were supposed to search or navigate endlessly, right? And just find you that information and maybe link you and provide links to the specific locations where that information was found, right? That by itself would be already useful. Like, I never saw a search that is really good. Search itself. You know what I often do is, I'm jumping all over the place. Most of the time, I search when it's something public, not internal, right? But same logic. I often search with Google instead of using search of that something specific. I don't know whether that's me being outlier or no, but those searches never work well.
Site colon is your friend in Google. Always.
Exactly.
So before we get back to what the real title is, how to use ChatGPT, I'm assuming you might have a solid example of what we could sort of look at. Maybe not dig deep, but at least a concrete example. Before we get there, we want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, and that is Barbaro Moho. Now, you may have heard of them before, but they're back again with us for 2024. And let's get into it. Are you ready to spice up your life while you optimize your conversations for ChatGPT? I bet you are. Meet Barbaro Moho, the delicious Cuban hot sauce with a kick that's sponsoring today's episode. Barbaro Moho brings the heat with their unique Cuban marinade base, adding an unforgettable flavor to your favorite dishes. With flavors like El Habanero, Halibo, Panazzo, and Best Day Ever, there's a perfect match for everyone's taste buds. As a DevOps Paradox listener, you're entitled to an exclusive 25% discount on your first order. Just visit barbaromoho.com and use the promo code DevOps25, that's DevOps, the number 2, and the number 5 at checkout to claim your discount. Now trust me, you don't want to miss out on this chance to taste the best Cuban hot sauce out there. So go ahead and order your bottles of Barbaro Moho today, and remember to use the promo code DevOps25, that's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 5, to get 25% off your first order. Thanks again to Barbaro Moho for sponsoring today's episode. Now, during that time, did you actually go out and interact with ChatGPT to figure out what is the best possible hot sauce to get for Cuban meats? Did you?
I didn't, but I will.
Okay, well, don't do it right now because we're actually back to the show. This is what you need to do.
I know. You already scolded me a couple of times from disconnecting from the streams we do.
I know.
I learned my lesson. I'm not Googling anything or GPTing anything while talking to you.
So you were telling me offline right before we started that you have been playing around with, and you just mentioned it, the Azure OpenAI service or OpenAI Studio or whatever the name is. We didn't bother to look it up. So it's something in that ballpark. Now, just in case you have been living under a rock for the past year plus months, all of the OpenAI infrastructure runs on Azure, at least what we've been told.
That's correct.
Microsoft is a very large funder of OpenAI, but not with cash.
The largest.
The largest, but not with cash.
It's with cash as well. They poured billions into it, I think.
It's been Azure credits, a lot of it.
Okay, yeah.
All right, at least from what's being publicly reported. I have no inside information. So number one, if you need to do a startup in AI, first off, you've got to go to a large cloud provider that will guarantee to give you large amounts of credit so you don't have to pay for it, right?
Yeah, they give you credits. I don't think I got credits, to be honest.
No, I'm talking about if you're building a startup around AI.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Align yourself with a cloud provider to give you free credits, and a lot of them.
Exactly.
Okay.
A lot.
All right. That was a rabbit trail that we didn't need to go down. But just realize it's not cheap to do this. If you think you're going to build the next OpenAI competitor, you are dreaming. But if you actually do it, please come back and come on the show and tell us how you did it, because we'd be interested to know how you pulled it off.
I feel that building competitors to something like GPT and, Google, whatever they call it, and so on and so forth, that's going to be out of reach for vast majority of people. And I think that difference is going to be only increasing, right? Because those models are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and those companies already have so much data that I think that vast majority of us will be doing the next best thing, which is using those models to do something with it.
Okay, speaking of those models, what have you found out in your, I'm going to call it playing around with, but I have a feeling it's been more than playing with the OpenAI service in Azure?
First, I switched from GPT to Azure simply because for me, I'm already using Azure. I use all big three, right? It's so much easier for me to go through their subscription than GPTs, and I had problems with GPT. They never give me the latest. I'm disappointed. Anyways, but essentially it's very similar. You get the same prompt, right? You say, hey, I want to deploy this model, and out of the box from the console in Azure, you get similar prompt. If you similar prompt for DALL-E or for GPT, where you ask questions and it answers them and so on and so forth. To me, that's not a big deal. What comes after that feels interesting, right? Using their APIs to augment whatever you're doing, right? Now, there are two ways we can approach it. From the company perspective, you can say, I'm going to augment my product to give people, support or some additional features through those APIs, which is, to me, at the same time, the feeling is, why not? But also, okay, everybody's doing that. You're not special, right? Kind of like you spent 2 days. I don't believe that that's a real deal. But then, personally, I find it very interesting to, as a person, augment what I'm doing with GPT or GPT-like services, right? Like now I'm rewriting again for the third time that silly program that I used to do all the tasks with creating videos. And instead of going to some web browser or something, I have an application that does all that to me, and now, among other things, generates the titles and the tags and the descriptions, and then I modify it. And this is going back to the previous conversation, right? I don't trust it blindly. It's not. I cannot just say generate stuff for me and say go. I'm not interested in it, but it gives me a good starting point.
So, in updating this CLI that you're doing, I'm assuming you're doing it in VS Code.
In VS Code, yes.
And it's tied. So there's a VS Code plugin that's tied into Azure, correct?
No. So in VS Code, I'm using GitHub Copilot or whatever it's called right now, right? Which is giving me different type of suggestions, coding suggestions and things like that. And that works great. I love it. And then the API itself, it's a relatively simple library once you get used to it. The major challenge, and when I say a challenge, I mean like 15 minutes of your life, is to understand that when you're writing code that uses AI, you need to maintain yourself the whole history of what you're doing. If I go to ChatGPT on OpenAI browser, whatever, I ask a question and I say, oh, can you make it shorter, right? When you work with APIs, that doesn't work, right? I need to send it always the whole communication, both my questions and its answers, and then augment it with what else I want to ask and send it back. It's always the full package, full history in a way. But once you get around that, the rest is really trivial to do. That's one of the reasons why I think it's not a business idea. Everybody can do that, but on personal level, it's very, very helpful.
So what other concrete examples have you done, either with the Azure service, you've already talked about GitHub Copilot. Obviously, that's just helping you write code. It will do more for us, right?
Yeah, in my case, helping me not write code. Copilot helping me write code. Azure OpenAI helping me get a starting point for everything related to YouTube, titles, descriptions, tags, all that stuff. What I want to do next, and I don't know whether this is even possible, so don't judge me because I haven't even started, but I want to figure out how can I analyze my videos and then do something from it, right? Some kind of maybe better description, better tags, include audio, video, images into what I'm doing. I don't know whether it's possible, but one can dream.
Well, anything is possible. FFmpeg is your friend from that perspective. It's just a matter of feeding FFmpeg into AI. What would you tell somebody today if they were coming to you and asking, in fact, over in the Slack workspace, asking the question, okay, Viktor, I listened to this episode. You were talking about how to use ChatGPT for DevOps. Let's say I'm setting up the conversation right now, right? I'm defining everything. I am somebody that's been in the company for a while. I've been around 5-6 years. I know my role pretty well. Where should I really start with this? Because I'm running into problems anytime we have to deal with X thing within the company. That isn't new. It's there. So how should I go about training myself, number one, of how to use these tools, but number two, how could I actually use these tools to help create something that will potentially remove that part to where I don't ever have to forget about it again?
I mean, the easiest one is to start using it like non-engineers are using it, right? ChatGPT, right? Just talk to it, ask questions, and approach it from the perspective as if it's a human, right? Don't assume that whatever you asked and you got the answer, that answer is correct. Kind of like, check it, double check it, ask more. Kind of try to find holes into it. It's the same thing as you would do in a conversation with a person, right? Then there is, from the coding perspective, when I say coding, I mean not how to help you code. That's Copilot or whatever you're using, Whisperer, right? But start getting ready for, nobody knows, I don't think that anybody knows what that will be, but AI will be part of what you're doing from the application perspective there for sure. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we know really what to do with it. But you want to be ready for that something when it comes, and it's going to come soon. The silly examples with the videos, right? Of course, I'm spending so much more time coding it, and that time is not going to pay off in a year if I would do it manually, right? It's not really helping me. It's more understanding what is coming without having a clear idea, Same thing, let's say if we move back like 5 years in time and say, okay, this Kubernetes thingy, what should I do with it? Probably nothing. It's not there yet. I'm talking in the past, right? But get ready for that something when it comes. I feel that we are in a similar space. Or let's say cloud, right? 10 years ago. 10 years ago, not many companies were in cloud. Does that mean that you should be oblivious of it? No. You should jump into it right away, right? For when it comes, you'll be the first one in line.
See, that's where I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think you needed to have jumped in first in line. I think that's fine if you are working at startups, you're an individual contributor or whatever, doing it on your side. But I think banks, insurance companies, they may have a small little team that goes off and does that, but as a whole for the company, there's no way. Not a chance.
Yeah, but that's why I said you should have jumped, because if you're a curious person and you're maybe a bit frustrated where the company is and stuff like that, wouldn't you want to be in that team? And if the answer is yes, how can you be in that team if you know nothing about it?
You're making my point for me. I was going against you, but I was trying to get you to that exact point you just said.
Yeah.
If you are tired of working on what would be called brownfield applications, which I may also call deadfield applications, you have got to do what Viktor just said, and you've got to learn. If you're 2 years away from retirement, it's your choice.
Oh yeah,
right. Whatever you want to do, it's your choice.
And also, working in one or the other is not better or worse. It just depends on you, right? There is nothing wrong working with COBOL.
No, especially if you're pulling down $700,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
You're making the same as the AI data scientists, and COBOL's a heck of a lot easier in data science. That Probably could be argued, but I'm not a data scientist.
And bear in mind that everything I said so far is not from the perspective of data scientist, right? I'm not a data scientist. That would be a completely different story. I'm more like from somebody else's perspective.
So if you're curious, this would be the thing to be curious about, not about how to install Kubernetes. Correct?
Exactly. Now, Kubernetes is a service, right? Kind of like again, it's moving. The bar is moving all the time, right? Now you're not that curious about how to install it. You're curious how to do something in it. And very soon you will not be curious about that either, because that problem will be solved and easy. It will be a button, right? So I guess the question is, do you want to get involved into something? And different people will have a different answer, right? Do you want to be involved into something before there is a button or after there is a button?
If you want to be the person before the button, get in now. If you want to be the person with the button, wait another 5 years. And both answers are fine.
Exactly.
So as we've gone through this conversation, notice how I use the word conversation, where should you start? I think we just answered it there. If you're curious and you're wanting to learn, get on now. I think today, we could have said this maybe last November, like when ChatGPT came out, but again, back then, there were lots of weird things that were happening. I think we are now in January of 2024, where Kubernetes was at around 116, which to me was, or 114. Those were like the first real Kubernetes versions to me.
I think we're even earlier, to be honest.
You think so?
Yeah, I think that ChatGPT 4, its variations are acceptable, bearable. I don't think that they're really good. I just think that up to 4, it was really bad. It was curious. It can answer my questions, right? And it's making silly, giving me silly answers, and more often wrong than right, and all those things. Until 4, I think it was unacceptable for anything but, hey, this is coming. 4 makes certain sense. I don't think we're there yet, right? But now I can see kind of, okay, so this can be useful. It's not earth-shattering. It's not replacing much of my work yet. But this is the first time I can see it. Kind of, yeah, okay, this is it, right? When text is concerned, like with images, I'm still very, very unhappy. I don't think it's anywhere close to where it should be. But we're getting there. But yeah, it's earlier than 14. I would say that Kubernetes 14 was probably the moment, if you're not very early adopter, when I would say confidently, yeah, this is production ready. Kind of, if you're waiting now, there is no reason to wait. AI, I don't think it's production ready, meaning it will replace everything now, not yet.
So what do you think? Are you going to go off and learn AI, or are you just going to wait for another 5 years? I still haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet. We already know where Viktor is. He's already doing it. We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.